Hello and welcome to Music Rewind, a podcast where we look to tell the stories behind our favorite albums. I'm your host, Steve Epley, and in each episode I will invite a guest to tell us about their favorite music album, how they discovered it, and what makes it special to them. Joining me today is a new friend and hopefully a repeating guest on the show, Doug Brinkler. Doug is an extreme music enthusiast, a fan of hot rods and all things motorcycles, and also a reported encyclopedia of classic rock. Welcome, Doug, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure being here. Or at least we'll see if it's going to be a pleasure.
Now, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Alan's been talking you up a lot about your music knowledge and your passion for classic rock.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Where should we start? You want to just how I got into rock and roll, or?
Well, no, we'll jump right into this as our usual format. What is your favorite album and how did you discover it?
I really like where it began was the Van Halen I record album. And I grew up in a household that had two types of music, country and Western. And
That's always a good line.
Yeah, I have an appreciation of that music more now than I did then. I think it's way better than a lot of the stuff that's out now. But how I got to this album was we had a neighbor just a couple houses down, and his dad was a piano teacher, and he was a very good guitarist. And so he'd be playing music outside his window. I mean, you could just hear it. I'm like, wow, that's great. He was cool. Everybody in Peoria knew him. He was a very good guitar player, and everybody wanted him in their band. I went over there to talk to him, and he had this record album, and he let me take it home. It came out in February of 1978. At that time, you had to remember that Hopelessly Devoted to You by Olivia Newton-John and Macho Man from the Village People and Last Dance, Donna Summers.
Those are probably dominating the charts at the time.
They
sure.
were, yeah. Barry Manilow, So, so I get this record album, and I'm like, oh, this will be cool. I'll put it on. And I got a small little record player for Christmas one time, had little speakers connected to it. And they were probably 2x4-inch speakers, nothing big at all. And I listened to my classical Star Wars album and things like that. I put Van Halen album on, and the first song on that is Runnin' with the Devil. The very first thing you hear is a blaring car horn or bus horn driving by. Then you hear this bass line just boom, boom, boom. It's like blunt force trauma. After that, the drums, the guitars kick in. I'm just like, what is this?
So how old were you when you first listened to this?
Well, I'd be like 11 years old.
Okay.
And it was just something that was completely different. And it had been out for a little bit. I just never heard that song. Don't know if the being in the Bible Belt, they didn't want a song called Runnin' with the Devil playing on the airwaves, which in the lyrics, it has nothing to do with the devil. It's basically, being out on the road, things like that.
I can only imagine hearing this, as an 11-year-old, with what 70s were great with rock. They were.
Yeah.
But towards the end, like you said, you had Donna Summer and other things kind of dominating the airwaves. And I can just imagine getting this album and hearing it for the first time and hearing all of these brand new tracks. It would probably blow my mind because the album itself is almost like a mini greatest hits album.
Yes.
And so when I heard this album recently, I just listened to it all the way through when you were bringing it to the table. I had heard most of the songs through just classic rock radio over the years.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
There were a couple in there that I had never heard, which was great.
Right.
But I can only imagine hearing these as a impressionable little 11-year-old. That would have been amazing.
I'll tell you what, next song, after listening to that, the next song was like, you need to put Billy Mays in there saying, but wait, there's more. And that's Eruption. It's essentially the guitar solo. It's 142 seconds that absolutely changed rock guitarists after hearing that. And that was the song that really fomented my love of Van Halen for the rest of my life. It's the song that anybody that wants to play guitar now tries to emulate. And there's people that do a good job, it was never done before. And I'm sure it's like when like Pete Townsend or Eric Clapton heard Jimi Hendrix for the first time, and just goes, wow, it would just blow their mind. And this is exactly what that did. It was just, even today, like
you said, it's only a minute and a half, but it feels much longer. He
Yes.
keeps going.
He goes.
And it's just amazing how he can do that.
Well, even the break in the middle has a little bit of silence, and it kicks in again. You're thinking,
Yeah.
oh man, I got a little bit of reprieve. I mean, I'm starting to sweat over this thing, and then you're like, oh, good. Then he hits you with the second, the second punch, and it's like, whoa. Every guitar player after that, I'm sure the music stores showed an increase in guitar sales because everybody's like, I want to do that.
Even in the 90s, when I was a teenager, I've known several guys that are still in bands today that was their turning point as well. Still, Eruption.
Yeah. I mean, Yngwie Malmsteen and some of these guys, classical rock guitarists, are like, for a while there, a lot of people, let's say like White Lion, and there's a lot of groups that even Autograph Turn Up the Radio were doing the double tap board, the fretboard, where Eddie was using both hands instead of using his pick. He was
doing the tapping thing
with the tapping thing. And so for a while there, everybody was doing it or trying to. I think when Eddie Van Halen did, I seen him live a bunch, and if he did something different than what he did on the recording, it wasn't a mistake for him. He was just rewriting what he did. He would bend the sound. I can't even tell you if they're notes because he never read sheet music. You know what I mean? He would bend it into the sound that he wanted. So I don't think he could make a mistake. I mean, he would, if it's like, oh, I think this might turn out to be a bad note. Now I can fix that and make it sound really, really good. And he's even been quoted of saying that he's made noises where he's like, wow, it scared him. He was never able to do it again.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's like, I couldn't do that again if I tried. So,
I mean, was Eruption even a song even Eddie Van Halen would play the same song? Could he play that exact song twice? I mean, because every time would probably be a little bit different.
I think he practiced a lot. I mean, he really started playing very young and would even play in clubs. His dad was a clarinet saxophone player. In fact, you can, on the Fair Warning album, Big Bad Bill is Sweet William Now, that song, you can hear his father playing the oboe and stuff through it.
Oh, that's neat.
You're talking about a group that they said, these guys are the kings of heavy metal. But when we go through this list, you're going to find out that there's blues remakes. There's also the Kinks remake. I think that I'm one of those guys that really likes the original song when they come out, even if it's old. I'm like, well, I like that song. I don't like redos a lot of times. when Van Halen did it, I think they kind of took it over, did a better job than the original. It's very rare cases. Johnny Cash remade one of the Nine Inch Nails songs.
Hurt, yeah.
And Soundgarden songs. And I think Johnny Cash did a better job than that group.
Trent Reznor even said that song belongs to him now.
Yes, and that's what.
Yeah.
And Lemmy, he did Heroes. That was actually
David Bowie.
David Bowie. I like the David Bowie version. Lemmy, he's not a singer. He was more of a growler.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I like that version. I do, but that's very rare.
Was that a Motorhead song, or was that like him solo? Or
no, that was it was just on one of the albums. It was like a filler that they did. Okay. They did Heroes. They did such a good job on it.
Yeah, covers are usually hit or miss. I mean, they may knock you out of the park, but they may just be like a sad attempt. Another Van Halen one that comes to mind is Pretty Woman, which I've always enjoyed.
Yes, Roy Orbison, yes. And that's what I thought. I liked the old Roy Orbison one, but I think Van Halen did it, you know.
But if they don't play it without the intro, what's that other instrumental before Pretty Woman?
Oh my gosh.
I can't think of it now, but Inferno or something, I can't think of it. But I love that long instrumental. It leads into Pretty Woman so wonderfully. It's just that's a great track. The 2 tracks. Interceptor.
Is it? Put me on the spot.
I want to say it's Interceptor, but I can't think.
Was it Intruder?
Intruder. That's it. Intruder.
Yeah, and Cathedral. 316. Eddie has so many different solos or pre-music for another song. I have even heard some of the Van Halen stuff in rap music where they've dubbed and sampled some of their songs, and there's big hits. A lot of people don't realize that it's like, I go, man, it's an old Van Halen song, you know, and they're like, what? Yeah, man.
I found out years later that he played guitar on Beat It with Michael Jackson.
Well, yes, and I know a lot of people went and bought just so they could hear that guitar solo of Eddie Van Halen. I remember we'd play basketball and guys would replay that song over and over again just so they could hear that guitar solo. It's so crazy now, but I mean, and because we all had big boom boxes that took 16 size batteries, and we go to the basketball court, and whatever we listened to is what everybody else was going to listen to. So, but yeah, that was great.
Well, now, how many times did you get to see them live? I never got to. I'm jealous. So that's great.
3 times, and it was awesome. You know, seeing them in '84 and a couple times with Sammy Hagar, and that was good stuff. It was different than David Lee Roth, and Sammy Hagar was probably my favorite solo artist before he was in Van Halen. I seen him at the Peoria Civic Center, and took my little sister. That was her first rock concert. Van Halen, I talk a lot about Eddie, but Van Halen has his brother Alex on drums, who is an awesome drummer. He was playing jazz drums and stuff in clubs he was like 12, 13 years old playing jazz drums.
That makes sense. Tell me what their father did too. So that makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
Makes sense,
and that's what the dad was, a professional musician. And so the kids started at young ages. And some of the songs it's influenced, you can hear, especially in later albums, you can hear the jazz influence. You can hear some blues influence here.
Well, you mentioned like the Shondells and stuff earlier. I mean, there's some doo-wop harmonies on this album.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That was in I Am the One.
Yeah, that was great.
I know, and only a band from California would come up with something like that. And that's a rockin' tune.
Right.
And then they could go right into, doing that. Those guys were just having fun. And
That nails it right there. That's what this album is. These guys are having a lot of fun.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, the lyrics wise, I mean, you're talking partying, sex, and just in the lifestyle,
Yeah.
and in the music, it just comes out. They're having a blast.
That's it, man. They were young, were definitely starving. I mean, they were making $150 a week and eating cheeseburgers, you know, and were not eating much when they were on the road because they just didn't have the money. And after this album broke, I mean, this album sold 15,575,000 copies. It went double diamond. So they could eat steak and lobster from then on out. You know, they played hard. They opened up for bands like Journey, Kiss.
Yeah, I saw that Gene Simmons was one of their big champions before they even recorded.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, he was a big influence and really wanted to get them signed and things like that, and did some demos with them. What I think is Van Halen was such a good show that the other bands did not want to follow them. So the record companies are like, look, Van Halen's going on last, because once you got rocking with them, everybody else just sucked. They'd get booed and everything else. And you're talking about the top bands at the time. You know what I mean? They're the first band that got paid. There was a music festival, and they said, we really want you to play. How much it's going to cost? Or they're like, we want $1 million. And they're thinking like Dr. Evil, putting their finger up by their mouth going, $1 million. And the event organizers are like, okay, really? You know, so they're like, yeah. So, I mean, they're like, this is sweet. You know, that was such a big draw. Some of these events would have Judas Priest and all these other bands, but Van Halen was so big. They're like, we need to bring somebody else in. Black Sabbath was another one of the groups. I mean, they're just like so much bigger than these big groups. Van Halen also had Michael Anthony, who was a very good bass player. And since Van Halen, he still plays with Sammy Hagar. Band's called The Circle. And John Bonham's son, Jason, is in that group. And then he played with Chickenfoot.
Yeah, I remember them. Kind of a super group there shortly.
Super group, yeah. All these guys from, you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers and all these other groups, and Satriani on guitar. I mean, it really was a really good group. He has a very high singing voice. And from what I heard, Van Halen throughout their career still used backtracks of his background vocals, because without it, a concert, if you didn't have his, it just wouldn't sound like Van Halen, you know. And that was after 1984 that he was no longer part of the band. David Lee Roth was gone. No, he was with Sammy Hagar for a while. When Sammy Hagar left, he left with Sammy Hagar.
Oh, okay.
Just didn't get.
Because I knew he was there with Hagar, because I knew he was on the Carnal Knowledge album.
Yes, yeah. And you can hear the high voice through these high singing voices throughout the Van Halen albums. David Lee Roth, his voice is more of a bass voice. He really strains. It's almost like some kind of guttural roar, almost like a lion or something. If you've ever listened to the isolated tracks, there's a lot of those on the internet, and it's amazing. I would not say he's a good singer. There are songs that he sings, you can hear his singing voice. That would be like Ice Cream Man and a few of those slower songs. Then when it comes time to sing some of the bigger songs, he is really belting them beyond what he should. And he has just announced his retirement. He's been doing Las Vegas shows, and at the end of this year, he's done. I think he's got 5 more concerts.
Yeah, I saw that notice.
He's in his 70s. It's amazing. You know, people go, "Oh, his voice isn't what it was." Are you kidding me? This guy.
Well, he did do that bluegrass side project for a while that wasn't all that great.
No. They had some flops.
Yeah.
I mean, but I look at other people.
But I liked his solo career. I mean,
yeah,
there's some good
DLR
tunes in
band.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, Billy Sheehan on bass, and I mean, he had Steve Vai on guitar. I mean, so
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, he put a group together that could go toe to toe with Van Halen. I mean, he really best guys at the time. I don't know if anybody. This is my personal thing. I don't know if anybody beats Eddie on guitar, but Steve Vai is definitely a good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's definitely one of the greats.
Good option. So the band has 4 members. Their instruments are finely tuned. They're singing, their bravado, the ability to go on stage and get the crowd pumped up and having fun. Van Halen used to run up and down the stage. I mean, they would put on a show, even if it was like in Whiskey Go-Go, where it was a small stage. They still played it like it was a big arena. And then when they finally got to the big arenas, they already knew what to do because they had been doing it for so long. He was a lot like Jimi Hendrix, I think, walking up towards the amps to get the feedback. Plus, he didn't want people to know how he was doing some of the noises, He's famous on making like a horse whinny or an elephant trunk noise. He can make animal noises with the guitar.
Really?
And when he learned to double tap, and so he was trying to keep a little bit of a secret where people were like, how? There was guys that went and tried to learn how to do that because they wanted to learn how to do it so they could do it next night. That's how they're like, wow. I've never seen that before. And they were just so excited about seeing that. It's like, I gotta try it. And they didn't even finish watching the concert. They went home to start practicing.
Well, that's what this album feels like is a concert, like a set, because I mean it's very short. It's only like half an hour.
Yeah, that's right.
For the whole
minutes.
CD, like 11 tracks. It feels like they didn't have a whole ton of material, but they had a great rockin' live show. Let's just take that and try and put it on tape, and they were lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, that's right. And that's really a lot of that stuff. The pictures on the album were taken at the Whiskey Go-Go. Nothing fancy. I mean, it's a photographer that took pictures and might have added, I know, like Eddie is standing there with a guitar in his hand, and he's holding it straight up and down, and where the strings and the guitar are has this like red hue to it, like power surging through it or something. And David Lee Roth is screaming at a spotlight, I mean, it just didn't cost him much to to make that album. You know what I mean? It was nothing fancy.
That goes to show you don't need 30 tracks and 3 discs and a year in the studio to make a great album. These guys, and again, lightning in a bottle. I mean, a lot of great albums are take a year to make. It's every musician is different, but it was phenomenal that they were able to do this in such, probably, I don't even know what the budget was. It was probably super low, but they were able to just knock it out, having fun.
And what's so cool is this album in particular, because later on, you did not hear the bass as profoundly as you do on some of these songs on this album. So you're like, wow, I can really hear the bass playing. And it's like, man, I can really hear the drums. I can hear the ride cymbals and the crash. I could hear the toms. And it's like, now they throw in this guitar, and just like, how do these speakers even produce this sound? The third song on this was You Really Got Me.
Girl, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Girl, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night.
And that is a Kinks song. And so I really think they did a good job. In fact, Ray Davies, singer of the Kinks, said after a Kinks concert, fans would come up and say, you did a great cover of that Van Halen song. And he, at first he would get upset, but he goes, you know what? He did a good job, and I'm not mad at him.
I did read that his brother, Dave Davies, was not happy with it overall, and he called it very middle America.
Yeah.
which to me is a compliment.
Yeah, that's what I'm from. If anything, it was West Coast. I mean, it was a lot of people don't know that there was a group called Angel, and it had Greg DeFria and a bunch of guys in it. But when Van Halen released that, Van Halen and Angel the group Angel were playing the same clubs and stuff. And they heard Van Halen practicing that song, and they told their record company, we want to put this out. We want this song to come out before Van Halen does. Van Halen beat them to the punch and got it. So Angel never released that. That was true. I mean, they had a little bit of infighting, different groups, especially Los Angeles. You heard Motley Crue didn't like this person. They didn't like this group. And it's like, dude, you guys are interchangeable. I mean, you all play the same stuff.
Yeah, Van Halen really stood out from the rest of the 80s hair bands. I mean, they don't really fall into that category to me.
No, and that's they call them they're here the guys are kings of heavy metal and stuff. Dude, I mean, they did Will Rogers' Happy Trails to You. I mean, Roy Evans or Roy Rogers and Dale Evans' song Happy Trails to You. These guys are just having fun, and they rock that one. I don't think another group would allow, or a record company would allow any other group to say, hey, we want to do this song. And they'll be like, I don't know. I think they had enough star power. It's like, look, we just sold 15.5 million albums. I think I could pretty much tell you. And that's just this one album. They've got all the other albums.
Oh, it sounds like the rockers of that generation, from the 11-year-olds on, were dying for something good and new. You said you mentioned how fast it went, multi-platinum.
Yes,
they were just they were hungry for it. The fans.
We had groups like Kansas, Boston, Journey. I mean, if a band came from a state and named it after a state, they probably got a record deal. And the music was okay. I dig that stuff too. It's just, it wasn't different, didn't break the boundaries that I think this one did. The fourth song on this album is Keep Talking About Love.
Yeah, you may have all you want, baby, but I got something you need. Oh yeah, keep talking about love. My love is right to the core. Keep talking about love.
And me, that basically is a hit it and get it song. And
right.
I can't think of any Van Halen song that has hidden meanings to any in their lyrics. I mean, they pretty much just tell you how it is, being whatever the thing's about.
I would say no David Lee Roth era Van Halen songs do.
Yeah.
Sammy Hagar can get a little deep sometimes, but yeah, Dave there's no subtext there.
Yeah, that's what, you know what I mean? So he ain't talking about love. He's just wanting it. So
yeah.
He's got towns and people to see, that kind of stuff. Now, the fifth song on that album is I Am the One. That was one of those songs that I think the guys just played to perfection.
Honey, I'm the one you love. Come on, baby, show your love. Hi, give it to me. I see a glow that fills this room. I see it rolling off of you.
They all worked together. And then they did that a cappella stuff, that we were talking about.
Yeah, it fits in there so wonderfully.
It's almost like a doo-wop. I don't know of any other group at that time.
Yeah, it shouldn't work, but it does.
It does, yeah. It's almost like if Sean Na interrupted the song, rocking song,
right?
And then Sean Na came out there and did something, sixth song is Jamie's Crying, and that's the one that I heard on the radio all the time. And the only thing I could think on that was his guitar was more of he made the guitar cry. It was almost like a talking guitar. Yeah. Wow, you know. And,
almost kind of mocking poor Jamie.
Yeah. Poor Jamie. If she didn't give it up, the stud wasn't going to go take her out on another date. And then she missed out on the opportunity. So now she wants to try to get with him, but you know, she knows what that'll get her. It'll get her sad again.
Yeah, it's a good classic high school love story there.
That's exactly it. And I think it would be years later on that I could feel that. You know, you're talking, I was still young, and some of that stuff went over my head.
Right. When
you listen to it, it's like guitar playing on that. There was nothing like Eruption or any of those standout massive guitar solos. It was just, he was playing along, and there was groups that had, I call it talking guitar, Aerosmith, things like that. You can almost hear the guitar talking, you know.
That track 7, Atomic Punk, that was one that I had heard before, but I never really connected it to Van Halen.
Oh, David Lee Roth was the Atomic Punk.
Nobody rules these streets at night but me, the Atomic Punk.
He was the baddest thing. He was a martial arts guy. If you ever seen the bravado, his stage presence, massive split kicks and jumping off the high-rise stands, and very athletic, play with swords. You know, he's a heavy-duty martial artist, and he would play with swords. He did have an incident on the Jimmy Kimmel show where he almost chopped his nose off. Did you see that? That was
I've never seen that.
You know, I'm thinking, you know what? You're like 70 years old. I don't know if I'd want to be doing that. But
reel it in a little, Dave.
In 1978, you got to remember, nobody was going to mess with Atomic Punk. You know, he was the baddest dude around. He walked the streets. You know, nothing. He wasn't afraid of nothing. That's what I kind of get from that song. Then track 8 on Feel Your Love Tonight. That, I think, is a song that they might play at a high school dance or whatever. You know.
It's memorable to me for the ending with those harmonies, which I would assume would be Michael Anthony kind of singing high on the harmony side.
He sings high, yes.
I can't wait to feel your love tonight. I can't wait to feel your love tonight. I can't wait to be your love tonight.
Dave can't go that high. When he goes high, his voice, I can't say that it breaks. He stretches stuff. It's not supposed to be stretched. I mean, the guy really, if you listen to his isolated tracks, and if you try to sing those songs in the car, try to get where he does, you're definitely going to do vocal damage to your vocals. You're not going to be able to sing like him. You're going to get to a certain point and you go,
I'm going to track down some of those isolated tracks for him. You know, I've heard ones from like Freddie Mercury and David Bowie and others, which are great, but I've never even thought to think of David Lee Roth for that.
Freddie Mercury was a singer. I mean, he was a singer.
Yeah.
David Lee Roth, you know, his true singing voice is more of a bass. And you hear that in like Little Dreamer, Ice Cream Man, a lot of the songs, he just takes it to a level that most people would have blood coming out of their throat. Not that it's just a range that I don't think his voice should even be able to reach. And I think you can actually hear that he is willing to take it to that point. It's like Joel Elliott from Def Leppard on the Pyromania album. His voice, they would tell him, You got to get higher. You got to get higher. You got to get higher. And now his voice is shot. I mean, for 30 years, I mean, I seen them in the early 80s, mid 80s. By the 90s, his voice was really shot. Sometimes in concert now, he'll have the group, let's say Tesla, on stage with him, and the Tesla singer will finish his songs because his voice is just given out.
It's like I got to see the Beach Boys a few years ago at Bonnaroo, and it was fantastic. I mean, Brian Wilson was on stage, and all of them, all the ones that are remaining. But it was really a Beach Boys cover band in the back.
Yes, yeah.
And then you had the remaining members up in front. But I mean, the backup band was amazing, and they did a lot of the harmony singing, a lot of the high notes. You could tell. I mean, but it didn't matter. I was seeing Brian Wilson.
That's pretty cool. I seen it. It was a long time ago. They played in Peoria at the Glen Oak Park. If you remember the amphitheater at Glen Oak Park. Yeah. I mean, that was probably about 1979, and they were good. Let's see, what was the next? The next one was "Little Dreamer," was the 9th song, and I think when you listen to the words, I think it's about following your dreams, even if other people don't back you, even if your dreams don't come true, you just keep on trying. I think that's what the song was about.
Yeah, that's kind of what I get from you. Kind of tales of big dreams. They're going to get crushed by the world, but you got to keep on trying.
Yep, and that's keep trying, dust yourself off.
I like this track. It's you got those ooh.
Yes.
You got those oohs in the background, or they really kind of move the song along, and I really like that track.
No one talks about the times you cry.
To me, that is Billy Roth's real singing voice. At no time does he sit there and go beyond what he needs to. It's more of a slower song, The 10th song was the Ice Cream Man, which was another cover by blues guitarist John Prim.
This was a surprise for me because I had never heard this.
You never?
I had never heard Ice Cream Man.
Oh my gosh.
So after listening to this whole album all the way through, all of a sudden this David Lee Roth with just himself, a little blues guitar, kind of bluegrassy, and then I loved it. It was great, and it's not my favorite track on the album, but then I love it.
Right.
There's that midpoint, come on in, boys, and then it rocks out the rest. I love it.
And if you let me cool you one time, you'll be my regular stop. All right, boys, I'm gonna put my banana Dixie cups on flavors and push up to 100 ice cream man. Stop me when the bounce and vibe.
A lot of people didn't know that David Lee Roth is actually a good guitar player too. You just can't play with Eddie. So what he would do is he'd bring out an acoustic guitar. Eddie Van Halen on like the little guitars and stuff like that, he would play acoustics most of the time. David Lee Roth actually played guitar really well. So yeah, it's really blues, and I like it. Yeah, it's like, come on, boys, and it's like a kick to the Jimmy.
Yeah,
rock it. You know what I mean? They rock it and they finish it out.
I did YouTube this one. I wanted to see if there was a live version, and there is on YouTube.
Yes,
where it shows Dave playing acoustic up front and just kind of talking with the crowd. It's kind of extended.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
On their last album, David Lee Roth got back with them for
the Best of Both Worlds.
No, Some Kind of Truth, or a Different Kind of Truth was their last one, and got a song called Stay Frosty, and it's very reminiscent of this song. That
nice callback.
It freaking rocks. I mean, it rocks. A lot of people didn't care for that album, but man, that's a good album. In fact, people when Gary Sharon took over for Sammy Hagar.
Oh yeah, Van Halen 3.
Yes,
it's not terrible.
But it's not terrible.
It's not terrible. People don't give it a good enough chance. There's actually some good tracks on there.
That's what the bullet or the ballot, and there's also a great instrumental before that.
I was actually going to ask you what you thought of Van Halen 3.
I actually liked it. Gary Cherone,
he's got a great voice.
Yeah, when he did with Extreme, I do like the Extreme stuff better. And Bittencourt was the guitar player on that.
Oh, Nunu, yeah, he's phenomenal.
He praises everything Eddie Van Halen. I mean, that's one of the guys that he influenced as a kid. He really does rock, and I really think Gary Cherone did a good job. I think Eddie had been drinking and stuff, but because he had a problem with that, so might have been a little sloppier. May not have cared as much. I think he had just had hip replacement surgery because of all the jumping around and running around he did on stage.
Yeah. And he was walking into some two big shoes to fill with two sets.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
not to mention all the fans, because you had David Lee Roth fans, you had Sammy Hagar fans, and now you had a lot of diehard guys that were like, you mean the guy from the More Than Words guy? What?
Yeah. I mean,
I was in high school when that came out, and we did listen to that a lot in our little party garage, and we enjoyed it. But the best part about Van Halen 3 was that coincided with a greatest hits album that came out from Van Halen.
Yes.
And that's where I really kind of learned more about Van Halen, was that greatest hits album.
That album was great. And then they had the additional songs and the soundtrack song from Twister.
Respect the Wind.
Yes.
That's a beautiful song. I didn't even know it was Eddie and Alex.
Alex, yeah.
Until like later on, someone told me, "Oh yeah, that's the Van Halen guys."
Yes, there was numerous songs. Eddie was doing.
Well, they had Humans Being. I forgot about that. That was the hit.
Humans Being.
Yeah, that was the hit.
Yes.
But the first one I think of is Respect the Wind.
They brought David Lee Roth back for that, and David Lee Roth played in that, and the famous music inductee to the Music Hall of Fame. It sounded like David Lee Roth was coming back, and lasted about 24 hours before. It's like, oh, we're not getting back together. It's like we just did a couple songs.
Yeah, they had that awkward. I think it was like MTV Awards or something where they're on the stage.
That's it, MTV Awards.
And David Lee Roth joined the band, and he kind of like stood in front of them and held his arms out. And Eddie was none too happy about that.
Yeah, and that's what I'll tell you. I had Eddie Van Halen's. He just died a little over a year ago. I had his email. I would just email him 2 times a year. Merry Christmas, things like that. I have an autistic grandson that was learning how to play guitar, and all he wanted to do was listen to the 1984 album and repeat, because he can do things by listening to it. If he wants to play Van Halen Jump, he'll get his little synthesizer and he'll listen to the song and he'll musically sound it out. So, and Eddie thought that was great because.
So you had a pen pal relationship with Eddie Van Halen?
Yeah, with Eddie. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, he was very nice. He was very nice. I never took advantage of the situation because he's like, "How did you get my?" How'd you get it? And I'm thinking ancient Chinese secret. I'm sitting there going, I guessed and I got it. I'm just a fan, and I've done that with in my life. I've done that a few other times. We're like, how do you do that? I'm not doing anything special. I just think like you do for a few minutes and try it out, and it works. Then I had that on my phone. And after he passed away, they deleted everything. And even on my site, my phone still has a picture of him there. All his things, when he would talk to me, all those disappeared.
Oh.
So now I can click on it and go, well, here's where I told him to have this and told him, I hope everything's going good. And I knew something was wrong when I didn't hear anything back for like 6 to 8 months. I knew he had been sick and things like that. Because I didn't want to upset him, because all he has to do is block you. I mean, he was very generous just to take a couple minutes out of his time. That's the way. If he had never put out any other music, he he had already put out so much good music. Everybody's like, they need to put out more albums. You know, this is terrible. They owe it to the fans. And I'm thinking, dudes, listen to what you've got already. You know what I mean? I mean, just listen to what you got.
You see that Van Halen 1 went back on the charts after he died.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
No,
it got up to 4 on the hard rock chart.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. They deserve it. It's terrible when people have to find out about these guys after they pass away. You know, people go, wow, I don't know who this guy is. And they look it up. And it's the same thing. A lot of people sell more albums after they pass away. And that's a shame, you know. So
that last track to finish that out, that I have my note here as chaotic rock.
Yeah. I have get yourself a set of old headphones, the old big Mickey Mouse ear things, and crank it up, just like they did when they were mixing it in the booth and stuff.
Turn your radios on. I'll appear right there. Yes, I will. Turn me up real loud.
And Michael Anthony, you can hear a lot of his high notes.
Yeah, I would assume that was Dave, you know, on Fire. I would have assumed that was Dave had you not told me it was Anthony doing the high stuff.
Yeah, Anthony was doing the high stuff. And then on that song, I think David Lee Roth was pushing the limits of his yelling or however you want to call it, his screaming abilities or whatever. So I really love that tune. But I think when I got into high school, I still had a boombox, and I can remember I had my Led Zeppelin 4 cassette tape and Van Halen 1. And so everybody was going to listen to Running with the Devil and Eruption at least 2 or 3 times before we got to the track meet, the other school, you know. And so we're going to learn a lesson in Van Halen, whether they liked it or not, you know. So that's the album. That's the album that really started everything. I'm not even sure. You know, there's so many good albums.
Yeah. So Van Halen 1 was your top one. What's on your short list?
Boy, Van Halen or everything, or into everything, because you know, if I had to pick a song that I could listen through over and over again, I really like AC/DC's Back in Black.
Excellent album.
I like Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. You know, that song has so many killer things, and you can just listen to it all the way through. For Van Halen, I really do like the earlier stuff with David Lee Roth. I also really like I really like all of it. I can't pick one, you know.
Well, they've got a large catalog too.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they really put out a lot of albums. I mean, both the DLR range and the Hagar era.
He passed away. Sirius Radio had a tribute station for a while.
I listened to that
every song
quite a bit.
Oh my gosh. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. This is so great. I said, you should just put a freaking Van Halen channel. I mean, you have so many songs that it would take a long time before you repeated yourself. Everybody wants some. They use that and that. I'm trying to think of it.
That was Better Off Dead, I think.
Better Off Dead. They use that in the movie. And that's how a lot of people learned about the Van Halen. I'm going, that's Van Halen. Really? Yeah.
I knew Van Halen from the 1984 album. You know, I was maybe 5-6 years old, but we had the album. It had the little baby angel on the cover. So it was very memorable.
Yeah.
Jump was everywhere. Yeah, during that time frame. But I always loved Hot for Teacher. I just
awesome.
So I was that 6-7 year old, not really understanding the lyrics, but but mumbling along with the
it was great,
very inappropriate lyrics.
Yeah, that's right. I brought my pencil. So great videos, and those guys were having fun.
Yeah,
I seen them in concert for that tour, and they rock. I want to say that his son was just in town Wolfgang. Wolfgang has an album out, and the kid plays all the instruments, not on stage, but when he tapes things, he plays all the instruments just like Prince did. And I really think, the music isn't it's still Van Halen, but it's not the Van Halen that we're used to. Eddie and them had got to put out another album. It may have sounded nothing like, because he was an innovator, may not have sounded like anything that they had played before. So I really think that he's doing a good job to carry on that legacy of awesome musicians.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, Doug, I'd like to thank you for sitting down with me today. It was a pleasure to talk with you about Van Halen I. Do you want to tell our listeners about anything you want to pitch or what you're working on or where they can find you? That's up to you.
I got nothing. I watch my grandkids now and I preach the Van Halen to them. They want to listen to it. We drop the convertible top, and I take them to car shows. They want to listen to Van Halen. They sure do like listening to it.
That's amazing. Thank you for listening to Music Rewind, a podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. As always, listen to the full album. Until next time.
A podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Back to you, anchors.